And you know what's crazy is I was going through some old journals, not journals, but maybe notes that I take throughout the days. And for some reason came across 12/31/2019. We were in Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
I was
Good
like,
time.
let me look to see what I was talking about back then. And it was around clarity and direction. And I'm like, man, I'm in that same challenge that I face right now that I was back then.
Ooh.
So I'm like, at what point am I going to commit to a direction?
Do you think that you have been committing to a direction all along? Just maybe not giving yourself credit for it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. A direction. You can put it like that. Just going through, after I saw that, I kept going through, and like that's the theme of my notes here is effective action.
Yeah. Yeah, setting an intention, going for it, and actually fulfilling it.
Do you remember that time we were in Vegas and
Oh, yeah.
you know, they say what happens in Vegas stays, but here on this podcast, it might be worth sharing what happened in Vegas. We met Stan. Stan the man.
Well, maybe even back up for some further context to share. Why were we in Vegas in the first place? You know, what was surrounding that and how and like what happened after Vegas? So 2019, we are in December. We're calling leads for a real estate guy here.
Oh, hold on, wait. I think we need to back up just a step before that.
Okay.
Didn't you just quit your W-2 job?
I quit this like mid-December. Took the whole month off.
That's right.
Because I'd never taken a day off, and they were going to unlimited PTO, which meant that if you had PTO, it was going away.
Okay.
And I was like, well, hold on a minute. I need to use my PTO before I... And meanwhile, in the meantime, during my lunch break, I was doing the calling leads and stuff, and I think at that time, I don't know, probably made $3 or $4 or $5 grand a month or something calling leads. And I'm like, well, that's pretty good. That's on my lunch break.
Yeah, part-time.
And so we had a conversation because me and you had been working on our own thing, building up our website, SEO, PPC stuff. So we ended up discussing a partnership with the guy who we were calling leads with to have him finance our operation while we built the operation. You know?
Dang, that's a really good point. I forgot that I know we partnered with the gentleman, but he financed it.
Yeah.
And that's cool to see is like, that's a different offer I could propose to maybe somebody else if I find myself in a pinch.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Someone else build the operation, you finance it. So we decide, you know, we're going to do this full time. Me and you have been going back and forth about that. I think, were we living at the same place? No, you didn't move in until April.
It's COVID when I moved in.
But we were over there nonetheless talking at that house. And so decided to leave. It took me almost a full week. I had written my resignation letter, but it took me a full week and I couldn't call. I had to email it. I was like, it was tearing me up. So I sent that off and we said, hey, let's close out the year and like go to Vegas and set ourselves up for the new year.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? And it wasn't like, hey, let's spend 2 days there. It was like, let's spend a week there. And not only a week there, but a week there at a really nice hotel.
Oh yeah, the Waldorf.
Yeah, one of the only non-smoking hotels.
Oh, that's right.
And non-gambling.
You know, I've never actually heard of the Waldorf Astoria until you kind of put me on there.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of a little back to the backstory.
Okay.
The first time I ever went there, when I was traveling all the time, you had to, you didn't have to, but you could declare your home every time you like flew away from your job.
You're traveling for work.
Yeah. So I used to, the reason why I'd always come back home and then, so I'd fly in on Saturday, fly out on Sunday. The only reason I did that was because you couldn't get to Little Rock direct from there were a few places, but if I was in like, I don't know, San Diego, I'd have to fly to Dallas and then, or Denver or Phoenix and then to Little Rock. So what that did was that elevated my airline status because the more flights I took, they measured it by segments. So I needed as many flights as I could get to get the highest status. So sometimes I'd be taking like, I'd go from San Diego to Phoenix to Dallas to Little Rock just to get back home. Okay. Well, and that was my home, was Little Rock. And then I told them, hey, my home this week is Vegas. And they're like, oh, okay, no problem. And I had a job lined up for the next week, and then it ended up falling through. And so what I did was I had like 1.2 million Hilton points. And I was like, I'm going to stay at this nice hotel. It was like 50,000 points a night. So I'm like, I could stay here for a while if I needed to. And I this is how it works with the status. You have status, you book a normal room, and then you ask for an upgrade, complimentary. And so I did that. I paid with points, and I was like, hey, by the way, can I get this upgrade? No problem. They upgraded me to this like junior suite. I'm on the corner, like looking over the strip. And dude, it was phenomenal. And so I was like, dude, I'm coming back here.
Wow.
Like, this is awesome. Super like luxurious, you know, all the whole nine.
It's a distinct smell too, is what I remember.
Yes. And actually what was funny is there was a gym owner. He's doing very, very well now. He's in Texas. He and I have been going back and forth. He was like trying to offer me a position. And I ran into him at the Waldorf. Wow. And I was like, I would never run into anyone but that type of person he's exited a couple businesses so far. He's starting this gym business, doing very well. So that is how I got put onto the Waldorf. Was I was just looking for places to stay in Vegas, and was like, hey, this one looks pretty nice and enjoyable. So
and now I see there's like different Waldorfs out there in these different spots, like top tier cities. Yeah, which would be cool to explore.
Yeah.
But anyways,
so back to the story. So we go to Vegas.
We're in Vegas, 2019. Just quit our jobs. Both of us had W-2s. I was at a bank, and 15, 20 bucks an hour. That's replaceable. So it was a lot easier for me, I think, than you, for me to just step out and replace, because I can replace 15 an hour anywhere.
Yeah, pretty quick.
So we're in Vegas, and I remember documenting some films up in the hotel. Yeah, and I think we were trying to maybe start a new path of branding, perhaps, or.
Yeah, I think it's just like owning being on our own, and like starting something new. I remember, I think I posted a couple of videos on social media at the time, kind of like sharing. I don't know if it was sharing like what we were up to, kind of declaring that this is a new venture thing. But in reflection, it was kind of funny. At least I was doing the action, like in the action. But looking back, kind of like giggle at myself, like, I don't know if that was the right move. I don't know. I maybe would have done differently now. But
yeah, the point is though, the people we met and ran into in Vegas.
Yeah,
and it's funny how we run into people, because that person we ran into, we're now involved in the discourse or the philosophy. And I don't know if we ever would have found something like that without bumping into the right person.
Yeah, I don't think so. And what's funny was so not only were we staying at that hotel, but we rented a car and we're looking at real estate out there. As if
that's right.
Vegas was going to be a new place, which in hindsight, like had we maybe been more in tune with the wholesale model, Vegas may have been a really good spot to be at the time, because like prices, blah, 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 gone up a lot. But I think even that would have been too good to be true. So we're at this hotel, having a good time, enjoying our time there.
New Year's Eve.
And I think we had like 2 or 3 days after New Year's before we came back. So we're out. We got, who was playing there? Tiesto was playing at Hakkasan. That's where we were for the New Year's.
I thought it was the other guy. Yeah.
Which other guy?
What is his name? The other DJ, the Japanese guy.
Steve Aoki.
I
don't know if it was Steve. I thought it was Tiesto. Anyway, either way, we were there doing. It was like a techno thing, and we were just having a good time. So we're leaving. I don't know, 5 a.m. maybe, maybe even a little later. And I'm like, I'm going to bed. And Cody's like, I'm going to play poker. Yep. And I'm like, what? Okay. So Cody goes to play poker, and I'll let you.
So it's I go to Aria, and Aria is right next to the Waldorf, so it's easy walk for me just to go in there and play. And it's early morning hours, the new year. from the New Year's Eve stuff, and we're just playing poker, and I met a guy there. His name's Stan, and we just get to talking, and usually you can tell when somebody is either withholding some accomplishments about themselves or they look the part. Well, for some reason, I was perturbed enough to ask, hey, Stan, can I get your number or whatever, or card or whatever? And so we exchanged information. And so let's meet for coffee next morning. And so I came back to the hotel. Well, before I come back, we're now like 7, 8, 9 a.m. in the morning. We'd been out all night. Stan was just waking up to come play poker because he lives in the condos next door to the Aria. He was just waking up at 7 a.m. getting his morning coffee. Meanwhile, I've been out all night at the club, and I'm sitting here at this table since 2 a.m. in the morning or so. A good thing.
Yeah. So how was Stan with poker? Did you beat Stan? Did you lose? What was the outcome there?
We had a guy at the table who claimed he was with Future. Future was doing a show there in Dre's nightclub, and so he claimed to be with Future, but he was a nuisance to the table. He was going all in every pot, and nobody could play poker.
Right.
It was more of a gambling thing at that point.
Yikes.
He eventually left, and then it was back to normal. But Stan, I don't remember too much about the hand. I just know that this guy looked sharp, and he was...
Was he wearing like suit and tie? Was he like t-shirt, like cashmere sweater?
Just a leather jacket,
Okay,
but
leather jacket.
Approachable too.
Yeah.
That's another reason that makes it easy to converse and talk.
Yeah. He's very well spoken, and he's the type of person that if you are not asking questions, he's not going to tell you. Like he's not the type to just like
come forward with information.
Yeah, just bring all that. Like he wants to see that you're curious to engage. And going back to last episode, that curiosity, we have that, and that just looms all the time and is threaded through anything that we do. Like the other day, I was talking to someone on the phone, very like, I don't know, not like anyway, I was just like super curious with them on the phone. I'm like, okay, so it was a buyer. I'm like, okay, so like where have you bought before here? And they're like, oh, here. I'm like, okay, why that spot? What was curious? Because I have a different story having been here for a while. I'm like, why would you choose that area? Have you looked at other areas? Blah blah. And then I'm like, what got you into investing? And we talked for like 35 minutes. Had I been, I just need to make these calls and do this and that, I probably would have been off the phone in 5 minutes.
Right. You're missing out because you're being more thoughtful now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, truthfully, I was just so curious. I'm like, I'm really curious to hear your perspective because I have a different one.
Okay.
And mine is not right and yours isn't right, but I'm just curious to see what are you seeing in the area and how is that shaping your buying decisions.
What I'm hearing there is your orientation. You're producing a mood of curiosity that orients you to become open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I had all these thoughts that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna ask this question. I want to talk about this. And I was like, we'll get to it, but while I was letting them explain, and I was just so curious and felt like a kid in a candy store. And I know it sounds like kind of weird or trivial about just like a buyer, but it's like, that's the type of curiosity I'm just like really enthusiastic about, maybe sometimes the smallest things.
And that shows too in your generosity, or I guess genuineness, when that comes across when you're talking to somebody.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
And essentially you are selling to some extent because you're looking for an ultimate outcome.
Yeah. Well, I think my intent there was with them was to produce an identity.
Okay.
Like, I want to learn about you, build some trust with you, and build like you to feel, hey, he's being genuine here and he's, inquiring. And, like, for example, I was in tune with the conversation in that it was a woman that was on the phone. She had a baby. And I was like, I heard the baby crying. Instead of being frustrated with that, I was like, I just became an uncle not too long ago, right?
You know what?
and so, like, she was like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. And then, like, that kicked it off even more. Because it's like, I understand that the baby's going to be crying. Like, babies have needs and you have to give them the help. They need your help all the time. It's not like they're out So doing my own thing. I'm gonna grab a bite to eat. You know.
Yeah.
So so I was really curious about that too, and boom, boom, boom. So, but back to Stan is like the curiosity that constantly fuels these conversations with people. You never know where it goes. But one thing I can tell you is it's never steered me in the wrong direction.
Okay.
You know?
And that kind of goes back to last week about showing up
Yeah.
to the conversation. You don't know where it's going to go, and when you put yourself in that situation, things tend to happen more for the better, not the worse.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, I got to take a pause.
Out the window.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
So one thing that I found interesting about Stan, the very first thing when we sat down for coffee was he said something that threw us in a whole another direction of thought. He said, "What's your offer?" And we're like, "Well, we offered 100,000 or so to buy the house last week." No. How do you help people? And from that moment forward, I'm like, man, that's a whole new orientation, a way to think about an offer.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what value, what help are you providing to people? How is that different than price?
Yeah.
And I think, man, we could probably talk for an hour just about the distinction of the value and price. Why is that different? Why is that meaningful, relevant, valuable? So the curiosity to engage with the Stan, then to meet with Stan. Stan introduces us to the philosophy that we now study. And at the time, they didn't have an offer for anyone making less than $150,000 a year, which we weren't making at the time.
That's right.
So guess what their offer was to us? Buy this book.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's the first. Yeah.
So we bought the book. We're reading it. At least this was my experience. I'm reading it and I'm like, this guy keeps repeating himself. I'm frustrated. This is supposed to be a business philosophy. He's talking about a bike. He's got all these like different, very trivial examples. And I understand why now, but at the time I am baffled at this. It's supposed to be a business philosophy. It sounds cool, but a lot of these words, I don't really know what they mean. I kind of know what they mean, but at the same time, I'm kind of dumbfounded and just overwhelmed. You don't really know what to make of this.
I didn't have that same experience. I know the gentleman we were working with did too. I thought it was different.
What was your experience with it when you're reading?
I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. Like in a movie, you're waiting for the climax. And Aji, and in the book, I thought there's going to be like this one thing to do with the computers. And so they kind of kept me at the edge of my seat the whole way through the journey of the book, which may have helped me get through it because, like you said, it was repetitive.
Yeah.
But looking back, one way of learning is through recursion and recurrently.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. So Stan puts us on this philosophy. He says, go check it out. I Google it while we're there, and it looks like a 1980s website. And I didn't go any further with that. We do a quarterly checkup with Stan. Stan's first question, did you research Aji? Nope. He's like, what did he say? He said something like, you guys have no offer of help to me. So the only way that this relationship is going to work is if you accept my requests and my interpretations, which for him to lead us. Because he's like, you have no offer of help. I'm a leader. You're a follower, basically. And we're like, yeah, we don't know what to offer you because he's made his money in that whole thing. So so then it's like, all right, we need to engage with Aji. We're on it. So that we got started from there. March of 2020.
Yeah, and I want to kind of loop this back in before you move on. People ask me, how do you get started? How do you do it? This is how we did it. That there wasn't not one.
Can you rotate this a little bit so you're speaking into the?
Okay.
Because I think yours maybe a little quiet.
They don't want me to be quiet. Can you hear me?
No, we can't hear you.
Check.
I think you're good now.
What was I saying?
Someone asked you.
Oh yeah. So that's the thing is there's no blueprint. There's no one way to do it, and it's hard to share with people. Hey, go do this, this, and this, which is what people want.
Yeah.
They want to be told what to do, which is what I was looking for in Aji in the book. And it never came.
Right.
Because it's fundamental.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Is like, And even if we were told what to do, you think we do it? It's
We'd probably find an excuse not to, or something else.
Talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Every time. And it reminds me of the business coaching we do with Dave. We'd show up. Dave's like, "What you got?" We're like, "We need help." And he's like, "What do you need help with?" We're like, "I don't know."
Well, in that situation, we needed a follower and
We need a leader.
A leader.
Yeah.
And that's what Stan was doing with us.
Yeah. So in Dave's case, Dave did help us and say, "Hey, here's what I would suggest going to do." Guess what? Next time we spoke with Dave, "What you got?" We didn't do it. Or if we did, it was the day of or 2 days before, not whenever we completed our session, or and then, honestly, I feel similarly with the coaching work is like with Karen, we have a conversation, and I remember in the beginning, she's like, "I'll give you the answers. You don't have the background to listen to the answer, nor would you be able to act with it. You wouldn't know it if it hit you inside of the head. By the way, I just told you the answer." And I'm like, yeah, that's not the answer I wanted to hear. So I disregarded it because I didn't want to hear it. And then 2 is when I started to listen to it, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of work. And I don't know if I want to go through that. And she's like, well, if you want to, work through these things, like, this is what it takes. Do you accept? I'm like, yeah. So I think with Aji, the interesting thing with that is it is fundamental, and it's there for you to make your interpretation. So yes, these fundamentals are truths like reality's operations, or their objective, but it's all your interpretation. So how you interpret this information and how you apply it, they just give you the framework to operate within, and then you design it and use it how you need to fulfill your intentions. Because they don't say, "Cody, now your ambition, you need to make it like this, this, and this." It's like, no, whatever taking care of your family looks like, go do it.
Yeah.
And that was where my breakdown came in with the examples. They're doing a bike as an example, but they needed to make it trivial so you could understand what components, organization, state, and structure look like with the bike, or the caveman example. But they're not going to say, "Hey, Cody, here's the best business practice to be in for finances." They're not an expert there. They're an expert in philosophy. So they're teaching philosophy. And they're very particular on what domains they will or won't, go towards. And rightfully, like, that's really interesting about them is they're like, "Hey, we're experts here. We're not going to claim to be an expert in any other spot. So if you accept any interpretation, like, we're not claiming to be an expert," just as a disclaimer.
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I see your notes here.
Oh yeah.
Early bird gets the worm.
Yeah. So we took a little break here a minute ago, and I was looking outside. So these birds, they feed out in the yard, and they fly up to the window. Not this one, but the one in the office. They fly up to the window and they just stare in it like they're looking at me. And I'm like, what? And I'll show you some pictures and videos of them doing it. And I'm like, what is going on? And I was looking out there a minute ago, and what came to my mind is, what are they doing? What is their intent right now, these birds? They're out there every day, every morning, never fails. They're working. They're working to build a nest, to feed and provide for their families. Like, it's like
the same thing. Yeah.
Same thing, but they don't have the consciousness to think. They're just
surviving.
Right?
Yeah. And that's the instinct is a survival. And I think what makes us different as humans is the consciousness, the conscious evolution.
Yes.
That we can attain and grow towards.
So good. So then to follow through with that is, what is our work as humans?
It depends what you want to take care of, maybe.
What I was thinking about was, if their work is to build, to basically to peck things, right? To grab things, to build and do. For us, it's all about our language. What stories do we tell? Because it's all an interpretation. You don't know what a bird is until someone gives us the interpretation of what a bird is. You don't look at something and then all of a sudden you have a story for it. It's given to us, like we had to invent at some point, but now where we are in evolution is like, you're born into a world of interpretations, and then those are pressed upon you And you may think you're coming up with a new interpretation, but it's more than likely that someone else has already constituted that. Or you're using those words that you have already learned to formulate an interpretation that may be new to you, but that might not be. So, so the story about that is it's all about the narratives that we speak. And I was reminded of this parable. This guy, his name's Guy Ritchie. He's a film director. He gave this really, really exceptional interpretation of the prodigal son, which is a parable in the Bible. So Jesus is talking and sharing this parable. And it's about this father who he has two sons and basically says like, hey, do you guys want your inheritance? And they say yes. And so they have the chance to spend their inheritance however they want. So one of them goes out into the world and does a lot of like mischievous things, like, you know, back then it was like brothels and drugs and stuff or whatever. So he goes and does that for years. And then the other son says, I'm going to stay with dad and take care of dad and work on the farm with dad, blah, blah, blah. And then the son that went off to do, the younger one that did all the mischievous things, he basically spends all the inheritance, has no money, is working feeding pigs, and basically like he's like dirt poor. So he basically somehow gets back in touch with his dad and says, hey dad, would you like bring me or like have me back, you know, with the family? And the dad says yep. So he goes and gets like their best cattle to cook to kind of like welcome him back home. And the older son's like, dad, what are you doing? Like, I've been here with you this whole time. I've been helping and like this guy comes back from doing God knows what, being blah blah blah, and like, he has no money, like, and now you're like specially treating him. Why is he getting this special treatment? I don't get that. And the dad says to the older son that he has lost his way but has been found now, and that's it. That's the end of the parable.
Okay.
So you're like, what? So Guy Ritchie's interpretation, there's many that could be interpreted. There's a very literal interpretation. There's like spiritual interpretation. So on the spiritual side, Guy Ritchie says that you're the father in this story. The older son is your intellect, and then the younger son is your desire to experience things in the world. So he says in telling stories and narratives, the prodigal son is like, your intellect can tell you as many stories as you want, but until you experience it, you don't know. And going through the experience, you have to go through that to discover that it is all, if you don't have like I don't know how to say it, like a higher purpose or something that you're moving towards, all these experiences are going to be worth nothing, meaning you end with nothing, you have nothing. And so he is basically sharing that to find yourself, you have to go through those experiences in life, and you can't depend on your intellect. So to bring it back to like the philosophy and stuff is like, we could study it all day long. You could be very academic with it, probably do very well intellectually, but what offers are you making in the marketplace?
Man,
you know, like, how are you taking care of your concerns? And this is where the narratives come into play, because it's all about the stories that you speak. And so so going through those experiences, that is the source of how you find yourself. Until you go through those experiences, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to sitting on the sidelines being like, man, I want to make $1 million. But how do you know if making $1 million is even something, an endeavor worth pursuit? Because you might not be able to handle the failure that comes along with making $1 million. Could mean that you fail 11 times and then on the 12th time you make $1 million, right? It's not going to be one and done. Maybe it is. I don't know. But you have to be open to the fact that you're probably going to fail and these breakdowns are going to occur.
Wow.
So
that's good,
man.
That's
Pretty
triggering
fun.
for me.
But the whole point of that story is it's all about the narratives that we speak and craft and create and the experiences that we have. One could perhaps even have the experiences but have a narrative that is very negative. You know, like, why me? I had to fail. I failed this many times. What's the point? Versus, I failed, but I learned some things along the way. And that provided me an opportunity to grow and do and find myself, find my purpose, find the things that I desire in life. Yeah, the intellect will be there, but the intellect has no understanding of the human emotional experience that we have. We have to allow that experience to take place. We can't rush it or think that we can get there without the experience.
Man, and it kind of goes back to birds. You're talking about birds, whereas and Dr. Joe Dispenza does a good job highlighting this about deer, or really animals. But like, imagine a deer is grazing and a lion comes around the corner and attacks and whatever. The deer escapes, but then 7 seconds later goes back to grazing. The deer didn't just sit there in fear and like wait for the lion to come. He already forgot about it. His survival mechanisms are still at work and at play, but he's not sitting there thinking of what just happened 10 minutes ago.
He's got to eat.
He's got to survive and eat right now. And so what I'm hearing in your story is it takes the deer doesn't recall the fear that just happened, but we do. And those 11 times to get to that 12th time is really taxing or daunting to the human mind.
Yeah.
I mean, we go through it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I wonder, I'm speculating, you think that has to do with, because we're social beings, we seek approval from other people outside of ourselves. In that, if we fail, we may perceive that we're not worthy to be accepted by people.
Not good enough, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of it. And you said earlier, hey, I can give you the answers, but you likely won't go do it. And I think that's a lot of fear driven. It's the unconscious fear that we're in that you can't see and notice until you come across a situation that puts you in a challenging spot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so complex about business is you hear the saying, it's not easy, but it's simple, or simple but not easy. And
make 1,000 phone calls this week. You know, that's simple, not easy,
man.
Yeah, that's so I think the narrative or the story we tell ourselves is that shapes our experience in life. That shapes our willingness to engage in experience, to be curious. Somewhere along the way, we developed a curiosity about life, whether it's because we lacked it as a kid or we had it as a kid, and we just were either our parents acknowledged that, or we wanted to prove someone or something wrong, so we are curious a lot. I don't know. You know, there's many ways that can be shaped, but bottom line is that's a story that we hold. And so, you know, to me, I think about, like, if your desire is to be, I don't know, strong or patient or whatever, courageous, you don't just get those things. You have to go through experiences that build the cure, you know. So in business, I think a lot of it is about like risk assessment and your capability to accept risk and to be okay with risk and to be okay with losing. Like, hey, like sometimes that happens and you want to do everything you can to avoid that or to not produce that situation. But the reality is, like, life happens and you could lose and that's okay. And so in the same breath there, to also say, if you win, you also get the win. And that win can mean freedom, could mean money, could mean whatever, whatever it is that you desire, it could mean that also. So you always have the risk versus reward. And I think about working for someone else as, this is just my interpretation, while yes, that may be good, but there's little risk to that for me. And so if there's little risk, then there's little upside potential, which would mean, like, for me, it would be like a restriction on time, restriction on freedoms. It wouldn't be what I constitute to be living a good life. For other people, that may be perfectly suitable, but for some reason, for me, I've always desired that freedom. I'm a freedom seeker, so I want that freedom, and I want to create all of my experiences to set me up for freedom.
You're talking about risk assessment. I was talking with Joey the other day, and he brought up about y'all's conversation about risk. And I said, I compared you versus Joey, I'm like, the reason why Chris would maybe do something like that because he has a skill set. Talking about flipping houses, and Joey was maybe a little risk adverse and getting started in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, well, the difference in Chris versus you, Joey, is Chris has the skills for that. So what are you doing to build the skill? And I put myself as a starter again, like, dang, like if you're starting out first time, never flipped a house or bought a house like that, where do you even start? And that's the hard part. And what we talked through was orientation. It starts with the mood or the thinking that you're in about such endeavor. And then sequentially it goes to intention. What's the intention here? Am I looking to flip it or hold it? Because then it determines by that of what skill you need to build.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, orientation, intention.
OIS. Orientation, intention, skill. Because imagine if you're in the wrong orientation and maybe the wrong mood, you're not as ambitious. If you're at a funeral, it's not a good time to talk about your intentions for next year.
Mm-hmm.
You're oriented in a different space there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think the same thing around risk, right? Is the orientation around that, or if you, so like some people see risk as like a boogie monster, something in the closet, like, oh no, whatever the story is, that shapes your intention.
Mm-hmm.
So now every move I make, I have that in mind, and I'm very risk averse. Like, I don't want to put myself in any sort of situation that could potentially expose me, even if everything is kind of looking pretty good, which to me it's like a limiting belief. So how would you be able to acquire that skill? You wouldn't have the orientation or intention to think that skill is valuable. So I'll give you an example. Like when I started the coaching work, I thought that communicating was like, how do I say that? Communicating in the way that's effective with the coaching work. I didn't think that was very effective. So because of that, I was like, I'm not going to listen to that interpretation. My own downfall, but at the time I was like, I think the way I hold how to do things is better or different, which is really just to do, right? And then it'll eventually work itself out. Rather than to engage in a conversation, hey, I have a problem with Cody, I'm going to have that conversation. How I would do it is I would talk to 3 other people, then, never really talking to Cody, and then I'd be in my actions, boom, boom, boom. And then eventually we would just like forget about it or something. But because I didn't hold the background for how valuable effective communication is, my orientation was not around that. So even though the message was communicate, talk to Cody, you think I was talking to Cody? I'm talking to Schmody,
Bodie and Doties.
Yeah.
The thing about that is resentment. If the moment you have a problem with me or somebody and you're not addressing it, that's where it's going to start building tiny snowflakes. And then over time, you've built a snowman out of those little small snowflakes. And we all know what happens to snowman.
Yeah.
They get tackled.
Yeah, they do. unless you pour water on it.
But anywho, no, that's good. I think what I'm listening to is addressing situations or things that you have with a person, but you didn't have that knowledge on how to.
Yeah, well, like fundamentally is if your orientation is off, it's going to shape everything else, how you intend to move. So until I had the orientation around effective communication, that was a challenge for me. So it would be like, outside of a coaching session, my work is to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And it'd take me weeks.
Man, I wonder why that's so hard.
You know what I mean?
Man.
And it was because the background situation or what was going on was my orientation was not around that. I didn't know that though. I know that now because of the studies we do, but that was not obvious to me, where it's like, what you're missing here, Chris, is effective communication, and here's how effective communication looks and shows up. Mine was more like, I have anger in my heart and I just want to shout instead of effectively having a conversation. So I've had to work on that a lot, to build the orientation so that I can have that conversation in real time, not a month later, 2 weeks later, but I had to build up to that. It's taken me years to get here.
I saw on that point a video that went viral, and this guy was walking a crosswalk, and the car pulled up too far, and the guy walking just did a little tap, and he rolled down his window and said, "Hey, you hit my car, come back here." And he was all upset and mad, and the guy came back, "Hey, sorry sir, you're just in the way. I was giving you, this was just communicating to you to back up a little bit." And his driver, "Don't hit my car like that." And he said, "Hey sir, I'm having a conversation with you as an adult, and maybe this is something you're not used to." And so he kind of checked him.
Yeah.
Because people want to get upset and angry but I feel that that's just a reaction. It's something that they're not in control with their emotion.
Yeah.
And so for that guy, I think it sparked him and turned it around. Yeah. And the light turned green. He said, "Light's green." But then I saw on Facebook, a video went viral just here in our town on McCain at McDonald's. These workers were just going at it.
Really? Like yelling?
It was a worker and a customer. But the customer knew the worker from outside, and they had beef and whatever. And it's like, man, that is just not a good look. But that crowd of people, they don't have the emotional awareness, or I guess intellect, to know, hey, we can talk it out. We don't have to peacock our feathers and show out and go viral on Facebook.
Man. Yeah, I think that brings up a much deeper conversation around accountability, and how accountability and responsibility are a good thing. And they show us where we can be better. And it's not in a way, it depends on who's speaking and how the presentation is, but I think a lot of it is we're not emotionally, because of the internet, you can say things and get away with it without accountability.
Okay.
And I have a funny example for me yesterday. I'm driving and I'm on the interstate, and there's like a long line of cars. There's a truck in the left lane. He's going really slow or whatever. So we're all just like patiently waiting for him to move over. Well, here comes some guy on the right side speeding up, and then by the way, I'm like riding the guy in front of me. I'm riding his butt. And this guy pulls in front of me, and I'm like, there's literally no room here. So I have to slam on my brakes so that he can, and so I'm like,
that threw you for a whirl.
Right into how petty can I be with this guy, And then I'm like, well, hold on a minute.
Man.
Hold on a minute. This guy, like, big picture. What are you going to get where you need to go any faster, Chris? No. This guy's doing the same thing you're doing. He's probably trying to work to take care of his family, his concerns. He may have been frustrated. He may be late getting to wherever he's going. Good thing you left early, huh, pal?
Yeah.
Because you're going to get there 15 minutes before you're supposed to. How about that?
Yeah.
And so, it's like I had to go through that self-talk, because in the past, my self-talk would be a little different.
Going to get revenge.
Yeah. Boy, I need to be as petty as possible with this guy.
Show out.
For
what?
Yeah, for what? What are you going to go to the gas station and yap at him? Mm-hmm. Like, no. What are you going to, I don't know. Like, what would you do? So it just showed me that.
You're human.
Yeah, and also it's like these things that people think are a big deal, if you really stop and think about what's really going on in real life, like the concerns you're moving to take care of, all of that stuff is very small. But we overreact, and then we need to be right, or we need to feel justified, or we need to feel that someone else is apologetic for something. Mm-hmm. And in reality, it's like we don't really, like, that's not going to improve anything. That is like, that improves no one's life in the grand scheme of things. Like, okay, so let's just say that guy like signaled for me to pull over. I pull over and he's like, hey man, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Like, if he did that, like I would have just kept going. And in fact, I was so unbothered by it, like my facial expressions didn't change. I'm just like, okay, come on over. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's just like, what really matters, and are you going to give it the time of day that the things that really matter, or are you going to be stuck, distracted in these petty things like these arguments over nothing, or the pettiness with the guy cutting me off? Like, are you going to allow that to ruin your day? And now when you show up, how's your orientation? What are your intentions? Did you lose your intentions for this conversation?
Man, I like how you wrapped it back to that.
Yeah, because like, if I get lost and you take me out and I allow that, now I'm showing that I'm not emotionally able to handle these situations. So then my entire rest of the day, gone.
Thrown off. To sum it up here, just to come to a closure and an ending, just for my studies and learning through Coach, I can't make somebody mad. That's on them. And that's what I hear you speaking about is, if you get mad, that is totally on you and not the other person. And if you're going to take yourself out for that day, that's all on you, and that's something you got to take responsibility for. And so the moment you can catch that and find that, is the same moment you can move on. And so, we're students here. We're not the experts. I'm still going through that myself.
Same.
There's a lot of situations that come around that you want to react. You want to play the poor me. For what? There's something in it for me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think too, taking responsibility for your own mess, and when you really wake up to the mess that you're in, that you create, right? It's not like someone put you there. You did. So when you're waking up to those things, it can be a lot to address, or maybe even be overwhelming of like, dude, where do I start?
Yeah.
Or I got so much of a mess here, I don't know that I can crawl out of this. But the beauty of that is you're on the right path, and that's the purpose and point. And that goes back to the prodigal son thing, is like, good, we're waking up to these situations, and you're going to fix one thing at a time as you progress. And as much as responsibility as you're willing to take, that's as much will be revealed to you. And then it's like they say, like, heaviest is the king that wears the crown. Heaviest of responsibilities is the king that wears the crown. Because at the end of the day, the most responsible person is going to be in charge of the most things. So how do you allow, like, for example, fulfilling your intentions? There are, let's say, for you to live a good life with your family, to have the business that's producing the outcomes that you need it to produce, to have the money saved and invested that you need, that requires a bundle of accountability and responsibility. How many people is that to? How many situations? And then for how long? So the sooner we can accept our situations and see ourselves for who we truly are, is the moment when we can wake up and begin to grow. And really say, like, okay, I accept that. That was me. That was me here. Breakdown. Yeah, I lost. That was me. Okay, move on. There's a lesson to learn there, and that's okay.
That's it, man. Responsibility. Chris said it.
All right.
That's
KC
Chris.
Show out.
I'm Code.
Later.